As if the Australian newspaper's Newspoll was a Bible of truth more than just a poll of general sentiment with a fairly modest sample size, everyone in the Australian media has decided that Peter Dutton has lost this election and all is done and dusted. Smells like 2019 to me. Remember how Bill Shorten was certain to win? Oh yeah, he lost. The views of many hadn't shown up in the polls. The quiet Australians, they called us. More like the deliberately ignored Australians, I think. Here's where the Australia's Newspoll has the primary vote this week. Labor is on 33, the Coalition on 36. Now, the Coalition is two political parties, remember, the Liberals and the Nationals, and the LNP in Queensland. So this means our two major parties, Labor and Liberal, have got less than 1/3 of the national vote each. That really is something in and of itself. Never before have Australians been so disillusioned with both major parties and as disengaged as today, I reckon. Most young people are turning to the Greens as an alternative. Like most left-wing parties, they prey on the young's tendency to easy emotional manipulation and their lack of maturity and understanding of economics and the complexities of life. Steal from the rich and give to the poor sounds pretty good when you're 20. It's barking mad if you still believe it at 40, though. Smart young people are starting to wake up, however, I've got to say. Thanks to social media, they are getting the economics education that shamefully they didn't get from our lousy high school system. In any case, the Greens, despite their regularly kooky behaviour and utterly bonkers 19th century Marxist policies, still somehow managed to poll at 12%. The largest Conservative party, Pauline Hanson's One Nation, remains where it's been pretty much forever, steady at around 7%, and the others have 12%. So who are the others, and are they worth voting for? Well, I'm very glad you asked. A lot of them are on the right side of politics, and we'll be meeting them today and next Friday. We need to avoid the self-fulfilling prophecy that this election is lost for Peter Dutton. It is not. Albo is cocky, Dutton is still competitive, and more specific internal polling shows support in the seats that matter is still favouring the Coalition. So any outcome in this election is still possible. And don't forget the influence of the minor Conservative and Libertarian parties. Because the thing is, and this is really important, folks, Australia's preferential voting system, you can vote for a minor party or parties, and if they don't win, your vote will still count for the major party that you put highest up in your rankings. It's pretty cool stuff, really. So if you sit on the right side of politics, you can vote for the Libertarians, Gerard Rennick's People's First, or Palmer's Trumpet of Patriots, or One Nation, and then put the Liberal or National Party, or LNP if you're in Queensland, next. And then your vote will still count for them if the minor party candidate you voted for doesn't get up. And you can choose the order. You do not have to follow any political party's how to vote card. But that rule applies in the Senate vote too. In the Senate, you're voting for 6 of the 12 people who will represent your state for the next 6 years. That's why every 3 years it's called a half Senate election. And you can preference those people however you like. Today on the show, we've got 3 minor party Senate candidates with us. One of them is an incumbent Senator Gerard Rennick of the People First Party. We have Rob McMullan, a Senate candidate for the Trumpet of Patriots, and a regular on the other side who you'd be familiar with. And also joining me from Melbourne on the line, we have the Libertarians' top Senate candidate for Victoria, Jordan Ditloff. Hi, Jordan. How are you?
Hi, Damian. How are you, mate?
Good to have you there. And Gerard and Rob, welcome. So, guys, I wanted to first start off by saying that next week we are going to speak to 3 other minor party candidates, including the New South Wales lead candidate for One Nation. But today we're going to have 4 topics. I'll ask you each to speak for a minute on each of those topics, and then we'll move into a bit of discussion. So first up, the big one for this election, cost of living and specifically housing. Gerard, you are the incumbent senator, so I'll start with you to begin with. It's a big question, but what's your analysis of the problem, your proposed solution and your view of it?
Well, cost of living, inflation is the difference between demand and supply. Since 1985, our population has gone from 14 million people to 28 million people. That has increased demand, right? In 1985, John Button decided to introduce the Button Plan, which said we're going to close down manufacturing. So over a period of time, due to a loss of manufacturing, increased bureaucracy, higher taxes, and greater inefficiencies, our supply has decreased. So we have got a difference between demand and supply, and that difference is growing all the time because more people are coming in, i.e. immigration, and less people are actually contributing in a productive manner. So when they said, if we're going to open up all the markets, we're going to become a service economy, we'll become a high service economy. Well, we didn't really become a high value end service economy. We just became a service economy whereby we have lots of superannuation, paper shuffling, childcare industries, university sectors, NDIS, there's been an explosion in that. So this is the problem, is that we need to get back to building things in this country.
It's a bureaucracy-serving service economy rather than a quality value-adding service economy.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. And in 1983, the Franklin Dam decision basically meant that the federal government could stop any projects happening whatsoever over state governments. So we're not building dams, we're not building proper, baseload power stations. We need a lot more tunnels, we need more ports, airports, telecommunications. And those ports and airports that we did have, they're now either foreign owned or owned by super funds, so those profits are going offshore. Similarly, when we privatised all our state government insurance offices, that meant we had to go offshore for reinsurance. 50% of all our insurance costs in this country go offshore, right? So we've got increased costs as well. Things like insurance is a good example.
Jordan Ditloff, Libertarians. Jordan, what's your take on the housing problem at the moment, and also cost of living generally?
I'd expand on what you said, and I absolutely agree. We don't have a cost of living crisis, we've got a cost of government crisis. 83% of all new jobs created in the last 12 months are government or government-serving roles rather than private entrepreneurial job creation, and that's insanity. We've just got money being taken from you, sluiced around through this useless bureaucracy laptop class, and then redistributed at a loss. And we see inflation as primarily a fiscal monetary problem. The government is overspending, expanding constantly, and it's paying for it with quantitative easing and printing money. So I agree, supply and demand is absolutely the problem, but the biggest problem is that the monetary supply is worth less and less. We're 5 minutes from midnight on the clock when it comes to a future that could look a lot like Argentina pre-Malay. So the Libertarians want to drastically slash the size of government. And we want to make it easier for the private economy to regain that initiative.
Yeah, okay. All right. Rob McMullan, Trumpet of Patriots, cost of living, housing. How do you see the problem and what's the solution to our inflation issues?
Well, I agree with everything that Gerard and Jordan said. I'll just say the same thing in different words. Inflation is when you expand the money supply, but you don't have a reciprocal expansion of goods and services to match it. So you just get more money than productivity, and then the price of everything goes up. Obviously, we all knew it was going to happen during COVID. They paid everyone to stay at home and not do anything. And then they printed a whole bunch of money to keep everyone afloat. So production went down, money supply went up, huge inflation. Now what they're doing to cover that is getting more warm bodies in the country through immigration. And we've also talked very extensively on the show, the fact that we actually have, a below replacement birth rate in this country. So the argument has been made that over time, the supply of housing relative to the actual people that want it would bring house prices down. But the immigration levels that they're doing to keep the economy, the total GDP numbers rising, is skewing that, so the house prices keep rising. So I'm very proud to be presenting a policy to reduce immigration by 80%. I'll also say, the argument has been made, and it's bearing out in the numbers as well, that Labor are using immigration as a stack in the deck tactic. So the people that they're focusing heavily on vote 70 to 75% for the Labor Party. So what Australians are actually staring down the barrel of is they're going outside the system. They say this is about our democracy. Well, they're going outside the democratic system and just getting new people that actually vote for the Labor Party. And I mean, if they get away with that, we're not going to win another election ever again. Ever.
Right. So there's many gains in immigration for them. We've seen this debate happening in America as well. Gerard, just coming back to you for a second on the immigration question, where does People First Party stand? And as Rob's just said, an 80% reduction in our immigration. I think the Coalition are talking more like 20 or something more modest, 25. How's your position on that?
Our position is we want less than 100,000 people coming in each year.
Right, so that's
Obviously,
about
that'd be-
80% as well, right?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, with temporary visas rolling off, hopefully we should at least start to get some stabilisation of the population rate. But I mean, we have to be realistic here. As I said with the Button plan, we let a lot of skills go offshore, so we can't just go to zero because there are people out there that rely on foreign labour, especially in the hospitality industry and in the rural industries, to do a lot of the hard yards. Mining industry, I think, also. And interestingly enough, coming back to that housing problem. It's interesting. There are about 2% of the people that come in on work visas for building, 482 visas for the construction sector. But what isn't being said and what people don't understand is that the number of new houses being built is still declining. Now, if you've got an absolute growth in people, number of builders in this country, ignoring the relatively, it's still less than the relative growth. The question is, why aren't we building more houses? Where are these tradies going if they're not building houses? And the answer to that is they're building renewables. And this is what people don't understand, is that it's actually the renewable sector that's also causing this housing crisis, because a lot of tradies are actually out there building renewables instead of building houses.
So we've got renewable energy and we've got government infrastructure projects sucking the workers out of the private sector and housing building. So we do need a small percentage of immigrants to come in and actually fill that gap, which is what immigration probably should be, and one of the good reasons.
Yeah, but I mean, they need to be not be coming in being university students. There need to be a lot more people on the tools, but building houses and actually building genuine infrastructure, not these heavily subsidised and inefficient renewable.
Yeah,
sectors.
Jordan, Libertarian Party tends to be more sort of open to open borders, I guess, is associated in America with a libertarian mindset. That isn't quite the policy of the Libertarian Party in Australia, though, is it?
No, and increasingly, even in America, there are many libertarians who don't adopt that. We've never had that as a policy. That was something often said of us by Pauline Hanson quite unfairly. That's never been the libertarian policy here in Australia, even when we were the Liberal Democrats. We support real net overseas migration numbers of about 60,000 to 100,000 by way of a much higher upfront migration fee mechanism. And that addresses a lot of the problems that have been discussed before in terms of actually making sure that when we're sort of seeking people with these skill sets or with genuine job shortages, there's much more likelihood that they're going to be paired to an actual job they're coming to if they're paying a higher upfront migration fee rather than essentially just being kind of dropped into the country to fill these supposed skills gaps that the government's divined through their infinite wisdom. So basically, our solution for a higher upfront migration fee makes sure that new migrants are covering the cost of their impact on existing infrastructure and making sure that the incentives are right. So we're getting people sponsored and matched by businesses, and we're getting the right skills, we're getting the right composition of people who are prepared to come here and work and support themselves. Great.
Well, we are 9 minutes in and we've already had more common sense out of the three of you than I've heard from the two major parties. Or the four major parties, I should say, all election. So it's an interesting situation we're in this country, that the talent doesn't seem to be in the right place. But we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. I just want to point out that we did invite, for those of you who are supporters of the Liberal Party and the National Party, we did, of course, invite Liberal and National Party people on. At this point, I think the view is that the other side as a show is a risk and a negative. There's no positive of coming on this show for them.
Their worst nightmare is being stuck in a room with Gerard Rennick and I, and hopefully if the election goes well, they'll get to live that nightmare for the next 6 years.
Yeah, well, we're having trouble getting them on in any forum at this point. So I think they've got a view of this program, or a view of all of the sort of conservative centre-right podcasters and shows, which probably needs to change, but they are stuck in that 20th century PR mindset, I think. But anyway, that's my problem. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back, and we are speaking to our first of two minor party panels on the other side this week. And we're going to do the same next week, but we'll be back in a moment to discuss more issues with these three very impressive gentlemen. I want to tell you about a fantastic initiative that's happening out of Canberra right now. It's called the Awards for Men in Leadership. The awards are given out on International Men's Day, which is November 19. They're designed to combat the increasing denigration of masculinity in our culture and the widespread discrimination against males inside and outside the workplace. The goal is to lift the well-being of boys and men and facilitate healthy collaboration between men and women. The awards for men in leadership are designed to inspire men to make a bigger contribution to family and community and to elevate positive male role models. There's a $10,000 scholarship for studies and professional development, public recognition for the winners, and a year of mentorship and executive coaching for each recipient. It's targeted at young men and middle-aged guys who fought their way up from some other kind of disadvantage. This is the third year of the awards and it'll be the biggest yet. To find out more, just search up the Awards for Men in Leadership on Facebook. That was a segment from a recent episode of our fortnightly news commentary show, The Other Side, with me, Damian Curry. If you liked it, support us. Subscribe to our channel on YouTube right now so you don't miss a thing. It's totally free. Just click that subscribe button and the little bell. And check out our Other Side Unplugged show too, and join our mission to actually do something and change Aussie media for the better at othersidetv.com.au. That's othersidetv.com.au. Check it out now.